Finally, I have completed my ultimate device for mind control. Behold, the video gaming console. This thing will be so potently addictive, people will take playing with it up as a hobby. Some may even become distracted from the symptoms doctors prescribe pills for. Finally, Big Pharma will be destroyed in one fell swoop, and people will do things that they like rather than using medicine to regulate their brains.
Not so fast, Dr. Dipstick.
Yes, it's WebMD.
Yes, it is. And I brought with me pills. Pills! Pills!
Hi, I'm FDRAR. I lose at video games live on Twitch and very occasionally put out YouTube videos here about things I think are interesting. One such video I did on that subject was about neurodivergence, specifically autism, and how the Pokemon franchise reframes the way we look at it. I'm really proud of that video, but I did tell a lie. You see, in the beginning of the video, I spoke about my wife, who is the most amazingly triumphant combatant of ADHD I've ever seen, and my son, who regularly impresses the world with his command over his autism. In that video, I claim to be a minority in the household, being the only neurotypical person around. But that was kind of a lie. I deal with a condition known as dermatophagia, or wolf biting. It's related to, but not necessarily considered a form of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I've dealt with it all my life and never really stopped to think if my choice in video games had been influenced by this characteristic of myself. So I decided to take a look. And here it is. Be sure to follow me on Twitch to see some of my plays live, or subscribe here on YouTube to see more edited, thought-provoking content, I like to think. So let's go ahead and put on our ankle braces, because we're gonna jump right in. Before I answer that question, I have to get one thing out of the way. Like in my neurodivergence and Pokemon video, the purpose is not to take a medical, psychological, or even socially moral stance on neurodivergence. And as such, neurodivergences will be discussed as more of a set of traits about a person, rather than to view them as disorders or disabilities. That said, dermatophagia is a person's compulsion towards gnawing, biting, or otherwise manipulating their own skin, and in my experience, it's usually the skin around the fingernails, but all skin is subject to gnawing, as a sort of self-soothing action. To speak solely from experience and no education on the subject, it mimics a form of control, emotionally and mentally. I only recently started studying the subject since finding out about my son's diagnosis, so my understanding of the habit is extremely personal. To me, it feels like closing a pop-up ad. Something pops up in your head and it can be something you don't want to think about for any reason, ranging from it's irrelevant to a thought so heavy you'd break down in public. The slight pain you can cause yourself, especially for me, the exact point that underlying fluid may be drawn, grounds the headspace and creates a constant comfort. It closes the pop-up for you, and now you can keep browsing. The consequences of wolf biting can be almost unnoticeable, as in my case. Only my mother even ever mentioned it when I was growing up, and most people just kind of think you're biting your nails, which is a similar but distinct phenomenon in people. Wolf biting, in my experience, requires a sting of pain that acts as a sort of shock collar that you just won't experience from biting your fingernails. There's a special classification for wolf biting and related traits that go beyond nail biting, and that is BFRB, or body-focused repetitive behavior. These rituals, these repetitions, lend a soothing blanket to snuggle under in a person's day-to-day stresses. Much like someone who throws frequent tantrums might have a repetitive self-soothing ritual to avoid a meltdown, someone similar to me might indulge in our compulsion just to not think about something from yesterday because it won't help with today. It's a reminder that your body's most urgent and direct form of communication with your brain is entirely under your control.
Part 2. Repetitive games.
This is where the video might get a little
Vague.
Repetitive isn't a genre in video games, but maybe some elaboration will help. Growing up, I noticed I had a fondness for a certain kind of game that not everyone else seemed to enjoy, which was strange because growing up in that weird growth phase of the internet before younger folks were connected by it, everyone seemed to like the same games as each other. They liked these big epic stories where you learn like 5 or 6 control schemes, each of which really only mattered for like a level or two. They wanted characters to die and never come back. They wanted chaos.
this.
I wanted stability. I wanted predictability. Sure, I enjoyed the big epic stories like The Last of Us, Halo Reach, or Final Fantasy, but my favorite games will always be the ones where you know you're gonna get a level 5 Pokemon and fight through 8 gyms, year after year after year. Now, I know entire YouTube videos will use this central theme as a criticism of the Pokemon franchise, but I'm here to take the exact opposite stance. The more Pokemon strays away from their normal formula, the less I seem to enjoy their games, with an obvious exception for Pokemon Legends Arceus, which, while being a spin-off, I would argue is just like the main line. I've made a 28-minute YouTube video trying to explain why I think the best Zelda is the one with the reused assets where you're stuck in a 3-day time loop and have to fight the same bosses over and over and over again. Majora's Mask was the pinnacle of Zelda game design to me. However, folks born a few years before or after me might have a wildly different opinion, unless they happen to be wolf biters too. What a tangent. Okay, so how do we define repetitive games then? I'd say they're games that have a fairly consistent control scheme from start to finish, and generally forego the concept of lives or continues in favor of a constant reset. Games like Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life, Animal Crossing, or 12 Minutes. And of course, there's my personal favorite, Dead by Daylight. A study from 2019 showed that wolf biters have an extremely high rate of video game addiction, and I thought this was interesting considering the nature of the video I was working on. So I did what absolutely no gamer should ever do. I looked up what gaming addiction is. Gaming addiction is defined as somebody whose hobby is gaming. That's the broad strokes of the WebMD style symptoms list. Of course, they'll include things like if you're lying to your friends and family about how much gaming you're doing, which, yeah, that's weird, but thinking about gaming when you're not gaming just isn't really a symptom of anything but a hobby to me. So I chose to look at what we call gaming addiction as a form of self-medication. And through this lens, video game addiction seems a lot more like a treatment for dermatophagia. Gentle reminder that no statements made in this video, aside from the single sentence that had a citation, are made from any positions of authority or education. I have experienced dermatophagia, but I have not studied, treated, or cured it. That said, video games kinda help? When they describe video game addiction as thinking about games when you shouldn't, I see someone only having thoughts they'd want to have. Thoughts about gaming don't seem terribly intrusive to someone with an OCD adjacent brain. The unfortunate truth here is that there's no conclusions to be drawn. What I personally experience in my life will never match up with even the folks in the most similar of circumstances. As a huge fan of repetitive games, I can see why they're viewed as an addiction. These style of games usually require heavy hour investment and rarely show any real results for those investments. It's kind of in their nature. So to the outside observer, maybe it looks like someone just banging their head against a wall to make the bad thoughts stop. Maybe it looks like an addiction to some people. But if you know anybody suffering from something similar to me, maybe that dumb farming game or the Zelda that plays the same 3 days over and over can help them for a month or two. Maybe repeating the same 12 minutes over and over by playing 12 minutes can help save someone some skin. Maybe they'll get quote unquote addicted to a game like Dead by Daylight, which is a game that got me streaming and the game that made me so many new friends and put me on a Twitch channel where we recently just surpassed 500 followers. I'm really proud of that, and I never would have done that if I didn't choose the kind of games I do. I love what I do, and I love going into the same damn trial and trying to do the same damn things over and over and over again. And that's okay. Some people need constant variety. And from my perspective, that's much more of a legitimate addiction than someone spending too much time gaming. But of course, that's only from my perspective. And thinking like that is probably what got people like me slapped with the label disorder in the first place. So maybe I'll try to think less like that. Maybe you can too. Maybe I'll see you online somewhere, in the stream chat, in the comments on this video, or in a game. Either way, have a wonderful day.